In 2016, Shadowhunters hit the small screen as an adaptation of the best-selling book series The Mortal Instruments by author Cassandra Clare. Following its massive success in book sales, expectations were sky-high. Fans hoped for a faithful adaptation that would bring this incredible universe to life, especially after the abrupt cancellation of the movie. But those hopes quickly faded. Upon release, the show received mixed reviews, mainly due to its script, inconsistent special effects, and major deviations from the books. Finally, in 2018, after 3 seasons, it was canceled. The cancellation caught both fans and the production team off guard, as Season 3 was still airing. With little time and desperate to give the show a proper ending, the team filmed a 2-hour extended finale, rushing to wrap up the story. But did this ending do justice to the original story? Not really. Had the series stayed truer to the books, its ending would have been far more epic, darker and more thrilling, with deeper character development and a final battle worthy of the saga. The true ending. In a world where Shadowhunters had spent centuries fighting demons, the fate of their kind stood at a crossroads. Jonathan Morgenstern, Clary's brother, had done the unthinkable. He had turned Nephilim warriors into his soldiers, using the infernal cup to corrupt their souls and transform them into his endarkened army. His goal? To destroy the clave and rule the Nephilim world under his own rules, eliminating any angelic influence. Weakened and with few options left, the clave knew war against him was inevitable. To stop him, Clary, Jace, Alec, Isabel, Simon, and Magnus embarked on a perilous journey to Edom, the demon realm where Sebastian, as they still called him, had built his fortress. Edom was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The sky was scorched black, the cities lay in ruins, and the air was thick with the presence of infernal creatures. There was no easy way out. If they failed, they would be trapped there forever. The final battle unfolded in this hostile landscape. While the Nephilim fought the Endarkened in the mortal world, Clary seized her chance to confront her brother. She knew she couldn't defeat him in combat, but she could with her power. She created a new rune, one that purified demonic blood, a rune no one had ever seen before. When she touched Sebastian, his body convulsed, and something inside him changed. His pale skin was no longer tainted by darkness. His once cruel eyes softened. In his final breath, Jonathan appeared, for the first time, as the brother he could have been, not the monster he had been turned into. The boy he might have been if Valentine had never experimented on him. He faded away in peace. No screams, no hatred, only the sorrow of what would never be, of the life he never had the chance to live. But his death did not mean total victory. Edom itself was collapsing, and their only way out was through Magnus. However, his father, the demon king Asmodeus, blocked their path. He would only let them leave if Magnus stayed behind in his realm forever. Magnus was ready to accept, but Alec wasn't willing to lose him. Before Alec could protest, Simon stepped forward. He offered his own immortality in exchange for everyone's freedom. Asmodeus accepted the deal without hesitation, erasing all of Simon's memories of the Shadowhunter world, including Isabel. Returning to the real world, everyone tried to move on with their lives. After everything they had been through, Alec and Magnus grew even stronger as a couple. They married and adopted a warlock child named Max, ensuring their legacy would live on. Alec had matured. He was no longer insecure about Magnus's past or his own identity. Magnus, in turn, gained a deeper understanding of Shadowhunter nature and Alec's commitment to his world. Despite the clave's strict rules on relationships with downworlders, Alec became a key figure in changing these policies, paving the way for a more balanced relationship between Nephilim and downworlders. Now without memories, Simon tried to live a normal life. However, deep down, he felt that something was missing. As time passed, small fragments of his past began to surface. For instance, he discovered his combat skills were still intact when, without thinking, he caught a flying knife with superhuman reflexes. He also dreamed of people he couldn't recognize. A girl with black hair and a fierce attitude, Isabel. A redhead, Clary. And a warrior with golden runes, Jace. His heart felt empty, as if a vital part of him was missing. Eventually, Clary and the others cautiously reached out to him. They knew they couldn't force him to remember, but little by little, his friendship with Clary and his connection with Isabel began to stir something deep inside him. When the Clave learned of his heroic past and the sacrifice he had made to save Magnus and his friends, they offered him a rare opportunity to train at the Shadowhunter Academy and become one of them. Simon accepted the offer, even though he didn't quite understand why it felt like his destiny. At the academy, he gradually regained fragments of his past, slowly piecing his identity back together. Simon and Isabel gave their love a second chance, this time without hesitation. Isabel finally accepted that Simon wasn't just a mundane fling, but someone she was willing to fight for and love fully. Simon, in turn, embraced his fate as a Shadowhunter and as Isabel's partner. Meanwhile, Clary was hailed as a hero. Her courage in facing her brother and creating a never-before-seen rune made her one of the most important Nephilim of her generation. The Clave, which had once distrusted her due to her lineage and connection to Valentine, finally accepted her as a full-fledged Shadowhunter. Jace, meanwhile, was still grappling with the consequences of his connection to heavenly fire. Ever since the mortal sword marked him with angelic power, his life had been in constant danger. For months, his body burned from within, and even the slightest mistake could trigger an explosion that would consume him entirely. However, after the battle in Edom and with the right training, he finally learned to control this divine power, stabilizing his connection to it. Now, rather than being a threat, the heavenly fire became a part of him, a reminder of everything he had endured and the strength he had gained. With the war over and their lives restored, Clary and Jace focused on their relationship, free from the looming shadow of conflict. Throughout the entire saga, their love had been tested time and time again. Valentine's deceptions, Sebastian's manipulations, doubts about their own identities, and the weight of their responsibilities as Nephilim. Now, for the first time, they were free to choose each other. In an intimate and meaningful moment, Jace gave Clary the herondale ring, an object of great importance to his lineage. More than just a gift, the ring symbolized his legacy, his family, and his commitment to Clary. With this gesture, Jace wasn't just offering her his love. He was telling her that he saw her as part of his life forever. It was an act of trust and hope, a promise that, despite everything they had endured, their future was meant to be together. Over time, Clary continued her Shadowhunter training at the New York Institute, while Jace mentored the next generation of Nephilim. Though their lives were still marked by battles against dark forces, they could now face them together, not just as warriors, but as a couple that had survived the impossible. In their rush to wrap up the show, the producers strayed too far from the original story, leaving many plot lines incomplete and characters underdeveloped. For instance, in the series, the final battle against Jonathan Morgenstern, Sebastian, takes place in New York. In a relatively short confrontation, Clary defeats her brother by stabbing him with an angelic sword. Jonathan dies without a true redemption arc or an exploration of his duality as both human and demon. Simon, on the other hand, doesn't make a meaningful sacrifice in the final battle. His transformation into a Shadowhunter happens effortlessly, without memory loss, or the need to rebuild his relationships with his friends. Some characters, like Alec and Magnus, receive a better ending, closing their story with an emotional wedding. However, their future is left unexplored. The Seelie Queen, a legendary antagonist in the books, is reduced to a secondary character in the series. Her connection with Jonathan is brief and ultimately has no real impact on the story. And finally, the most disappointing ending of all, Clary and Jace. In the show, after the battle, Raziel erases Clary's memory as punishment for her misuse of angelic power. She returns to her mundane life with no recollection of Jace, Isabel, or the Shadowhunter world. In the final scene, Clary sees Jace at an art gallery and seems to recognize him for a brief moment, leaving her fate open-ended. As mentioned earlier, in the books, Clary never loses her memory. After the war, she and Jace face challenges, but ultimately stay together. Jace gives her the herondale ring as a symbol of his love and commitment, and they continue their lives as Shadowhunters, a worthy ending for a couple like them. The book's ending is undoubtedly more satisfying and consistent with Clary's story. In the show, her punishment makes little sense, as other characters have used unique runes without facing similar consequences. The book's version allows Clary and Jace to have a future together without forcing an artificial separation. If the series had followed the book's ending, or at least attempted to, it would have provided the true conclusion of the saga, addressing not only Sebastian's defeat, but also the growth of its characters and the consequences of their choices. Instead, Shadowhunters took a different route, leaving out the battle in Edom. The original story provided a far deeper conclusion, one where every character found their path after the war, facing loss, but also embracing second chances. This is the ending the series should have had. A conclusion that didn't just close the story, but honored the character's journey and the legacy of the mortal instruments. Let me know in the comments what other topics you'd like to see covered on the channel. And remember, if you enjoy this type of video, the best way to support me is by leaving a like, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell. See you in the next video.